I'm here today at the Kilbroney show. Let's see what's here. So then to kick things off is this wonderfully basic 1985 Ford Sierra. Original trims. And it's perhaps not hard to see why these were such a, I suppose, hard pill for many buyers to swallow when they originally came out back in the early 80s. The replacement, of course, for the Cortina, launched, I think it was in 1982 in Britain, with that infamous jelly mould shape. Which took a lot of people by surprise, but I suppose it was a bit of a trailblazer, considering that that's just what happens now, isn't it? Every car is shaped like that, with sumptuous flowing lines to aid aerodynamics. But yeah, this is a particularly lovely example. Regular viewers of Weird Car Twitter or YouTube will be very, very familiar with this machine. It is, of course, the gentleman that is John's Garage. And it's an absolutely fantastic Renault Megane 1.6 convertible. Let's have a little sit inside and see what it's like in here. It's only got, I think it's 67,000 miles on it. Had a little look at the odometer before. Love those white dials, they're fantastic, aren't they? It's giving me serious Mark II Clio vibes with this interior. A car that I do still regret getting rid of. Manual. So it moves, it definitely moves, and aerodynamically sculpted. John was saying that he drives this all the time, summer or winter, with the hood down, and it's a dream. And you know what? I fully believe him. Leather seats. To be honest, generally speaking, convertibles don't do it for me, but this one certainly is. Sorry, John, I hope I haven't broken that on you. This one really is doing it for me. John from John's Garage on YouTube. Give him a follow on Instagram, Twitter and YouTube. Great man himself.
Car collection.
Here's a few words on the Megane.
Michael, okay, this car, I got this car about 2 years ago, rescued off a driveway, got it for €300, done a full recommission on it, and the whole way along as I was doing it, I never actually drove the car, and I kind of was like, why am I doing this, Eventually, when it was fully finished, took it out on the road, and I actually fell in love with Megane. I fell in love with Megane. I have no idea how it's gotten under my skin. It's not normally the type of car I like, but it's cheap, it's fun. The child can get sick on it, I can clean it, I can fix it, it can be broken again in the morning, but absolutely love it. Really simple car to work on, and just tons of fun. That's all I want with cars, is fun, and this is tons of fun for me.
Okay, early contender for the shonkiest car at the show is this. It's a very early, late 60s I believe, H at the end, possibly 1970-ish. Austin Maxi, and as you can see, it's, yeah, cosmetically challenged, I suppose, but I'm told mechanically extremely straight. It's a fantastic old thing. My grandfather had two of these back in the day. Have a look in here. Oh, this is fantastic, isn't it? And of course, then with the later models that came after this, it was a wooden dashboard that looked quite a lot different to that, with different steering wheel as well. But yeah, I love the way this thing is quite shonky on the outside. It's yeah, pretty clean and tidy in here. And as I said a moment ago, I think as far as I can tell, and as far as I know from the history of the car, it's mechanically straight. So who really cares what it looks like? I certainly don't. What a fantastic old thing this is. Now to a car that I suppose as time has gone on over the last 8 or 9 months, I've actually regretted selling. This is a Rover 600, not mine. But if you have a look at my other videos on the channel, you'll see that I did own one that was in very similar to this. Although this one doesn't have catastrophic rust by the wheel arches and the rear sills that mine did. Yeah, pretty much sure it's the same as the one I had, 1.8 petrol. Mine was a 99 plate, so very similar in age to this as well. Yeah, I do love a 600. As I said, I do regret getting rid of mine, but it was just catastrophically rusty. And I was a bit skint at the time. Oh, and the brakes were knackered, so got a little bit worried, I suppose, and just chopped it in. Has this got the traditional drooping rear brake light arrangement. It doesn't. But it may have the traditional Rover 600 window regulator issue where it droops and falls into the door cavity. Which, if you look at Joe Miller's channel or Classics World, you'll be able to see what I mean. I'm not being paid to plug their channel, they just have some fantastic stuff on there, so give them a watch. But yeah, whether I'll get to own one of these again is another matter, because they're getting rarer and rarer all the time. According to the latest NCT stats published in 2020, I think there's only 4 or 5 of these ones left in the Republic of Ireland on Irish plates. So yeah, they're dying out, sadly. Paging at Mr. Chris Pollitt. We've got some shonky old, well, this really isn't shonky, it's actually really, really clean Rover 800. And it hasn't got the partridge slogan, which I won't repeat, daubed on the side of it, sadly I suppose. But it has got a trilby in the rear window. I think that's a trilby, I'm not very good on my hats. But it definitely gives us some OAP credentials, which is exactly what an old Rover 800 should have, plenty of OAP credentials. This is a particularly lovely model, full leather, aircon, electric seat, very, very limited dashboard lift as far as I can see in there, which is rare on these. They usually spring up for some strange reason. And that happens on pretty much all of them. There's another one there, which is the left-hand drive one, so I'll have a look at that in a moment. Here's the aforementioned left-hand drive 800. Has this got the dreaded dashboard binnacle lift? It doesn't. Wow, these must be the only two in the world that don't, although I think it has been worked on a little bit. There's a little bit of lift there, actually, now that I look at it. But yeah, it's in pretty good nick. This likely will have spent its life in much more temperate, warmer and hotter climes than Britain and Ireland, so likely to be very clean underneath, I'd imagine. Because we all know what happens with old Rovers, a lot of them rust. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. So if you can get one that's rust free, lucky you. Maestro, cue the music. Or in the case of this Maestro, cue the sound of clatter, because it is of course a 2-litre diesel. So probably not particularly, how can I say it, enticing, maybe. But of course, me being me, I would drive this thing home, no problem at all. I'd drive any Maestro home. They are underappreciated and unloved classics in my book. And something that I've always liked is this really funky front wing arrangement, the way that kind of angles out. Always thought that was a really funky design. This one is an L reg, so it's a 93. It's a 94 plate, as it says there on the window, and perhaps quite ironically from the Auto Weld garage. Ironic because, of course, these things need regular attention with a sparkly stick because they rust like hell. If you leave it out in a rain shower, there won't be much left when you come back. No, I'm being harsh. These things have got enough grief off pretty much everybody over the last 30, 40 odd years. So I'm going to cut it quite a lot of slack. I'd love a Maestro. How fantastic is it to see a non-GTI Peugeot 205? Yeah, look, as I've said on previous videos, 205 GTIs are fantastic, etc, etc, etc. But, I mean, an everyday car, the GTI was not. Because of course it required more money, higher insurance, etc, etc. It's the style model, I'd imagine 1 litre petrol, and it's in fantastic condition. Particularly love the hubcaps, which haven't quite beiged themselves yet, but probably will with a little bit more time. Slightly discoloured yellow piping around the seats. No airbag, of course, it predates that. There's an awful lot to like about this old Survivor. This Fiesta Mistral doesn't have original wheels, sadly, but is in every other way absolutely charming. Again, a Mistral would have been relatively low down the range. This was at a time where Ford were effectively throwing every name under the sun of their Fiesta range. You had the Mistral, you had the Classic, you had the Frascati, you had others that I can't think of off the top of my head, but any semi-fancy name was thrown at the Fiesta around this time. And you don't see too many lowly spec Mark III Fiestas at shows, sadly. It's all the sportier versions, of which I'm not all that familiar with, because of course they don't float my boat quite as much as originality and bog standardness like this one. That Mistral badge on the grille shouldn't be there, but we'll cut them a bit of slack simply for the fact that it's here. Yeah, I really like this. Sunroof, so check the floor pans if you're going to buy it, of course. But apart from the not particularly nice wheels and misplaced badging, it's a lovely example. I used to have one of those. I'm delighted to report that Hyacinth and Richard have arrived. Hyacinth and Richard wasn't a Van den Pla, so it wasn't the posh one, and she of course wouldn't have been seen dead in a caravan. But it has got a picnic set in the back from that episode where they ended up falling into the river at the delight of Onslow, etc. But yeah, that's fantastic. I'd say whoever owns it's probably sick of the keep up appearances references, but yeah, I suppose that's how most people remember them. Behold, an unmolested, original, lowly spec Mark III Volkswagen Golf. Again, you don't see many of these around, especially not at shows. There's probably a few of them knocking around still as everyday vehicles, especially around the Dublin area, I've noticed. But again, it shows it's mostly GTIs, all that kind of boring stuff. This one is pretty poverty with its steel wheels and lack of fancy badging and black panel inserts. Yeah, this is right up my street, and a fantastic shade of blue as well. I'm colourblind, but I believe this is blue, I think. Interior looks lovely and basic. Original Sony stereo, I think, there too. It's a manual. Plenty of blanking plugs. The more blanking plugs on Crap Car Collective, the better. Oh, I'd love to own one of these at some stage. I must do that. Especially one in nice basic Povo spec like this. Now, as you know, here on Crap Car Collective, sportier, I suppose more popular vehicles are not always my cup of tea, but I'm going to make a huge exception for this utterly wonderful MG Metro. Yeah, these are quality. Well, quality as in I really, really like them. Actual quality, that's debatable. Lovely tweed seats, they are utterly wonderful. Yeah, these are class. And pepper pot alloys. Oh, look at those. I'd love to own any Metro, but I suppose particularly an MG Metro. Yeah, what a fantastic old machine this is. And of course, being British and being from the 80s, etc., there's very few left. Not going to pretend I'm some kind of old Almira super fan, because I'm not, and especially not this model. But that's a shame, isn't it? It's been carved up by the fire brigade. Yeah, obviously, listen, they've got to do all their practice and all their training, etc., etc., but the poor old Almira didn't deserve that, did it? Or perhaps because it's an old Primera, it deserved to die. Yeah, each to their own. We've had an MG Metro. Let's have a look at its big brother, an MG Maestro. Yeah, and again, a fantastic example of a hot hatch, which hasn't really gotten the historical appreciation it deserves. Alright, how are you? Yeah, everyone raves about 205 GTIs, Golf GTIs, even slightly later 106 GTIs, etc, etc, etc. but not a lot is said about the Maestro, and some would argue that that's good, but I don't think it is. MG Maestros are quality, and of course, as with the MG Metro, really rather rare due to the barbaric nature in which some of these were driven back in the day. Hang on though, is this a fraudulent car? Is this actually an MG Maestro? The owner's just over there, so I don't really want to badmouth it too much, but this looks very much like an Austin Maestro, which has been given fancy wheels and a new grille. I think this might be mugging me off, this one. Yeah, it's not got the original steering wheel from a... It has got the original steering wheel, but it's not the one from an MG Maestro, so... Yeah, I don't think this is genuine, and I think the seats had red piping on them on the upholstery. This one doesn't, so yeah, although ironically it may have actually gotten bonus crap points because it's actually a crapper car than it really is. Yeah, I'm not really sure how it'd score this. So I think that rounds off Kilbroney 2022. There's loads of traditional classics. There's another Rover 75 over there, just as I've already seen one of those. I'll throw a few shots of that in a minute. But yeah, I think that's all the ropey old motors covered. So that's it from here for this year. The first one since late 2019, because of course early that year was a washout, so it was cancelled or postponed to later on in the year. But yes, that's it. So I'm going to call that a day. Head on home. Keep your eye out on the channel for more Volvo and car show content, which will be undoubtedly coming up soon. But from Kilbroney, it's bye-bye.